गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जाय। नित्य लिलप विष्णु विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिशुमार भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज की जाय। नित्य लिलप विष्णु विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिशुमार श्रील भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जाय। नित्य लिलप विष्णु विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिशुमार श्रील भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्य लिलप विष्णु विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिशुमार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जाय। नित्य विष्णु विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिशुमार श्रील भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जाय। नित्य विष्णु महाभगवत श्रील गोरक्षरस बाबाजी महाराज की जाय। नित्य विष्णु श्रील सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जाय। नित्य विष्णु वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्रील जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जाय। श्री रूपानुगपुरिया गुरु वर्ग की जाय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जाय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जाय। नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जाय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासुदेव गौर भक्त वृंद की जाय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जाय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदाता गिरिराज महाराज की जाय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जाय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जाय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंद ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जाय। श्री उद्धव-गीता की जाय। श्रील विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर Sārārtha-darśinī की जाय। श्रील भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद गौड़ीय भाष्य की जाय। श्रील बलदेव-विद्याभूषण प्रभु की जाय। तदीय शुभ तिरुभाव तिथि की जाय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूत हृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hari Bol, everybody. Madhavi Didi, Dandavat Pranams, Ganga Mataji, Satya Mataji, Gargaraj Ji, Dandavat Pranam, Kishore Prabhu. What's Kishore Prabhu saying? Bhagavate Je Namane She Javana Sama, Tar Shasta Ache Janme Janme Prabhu Jama. One who does not accept Srimad Bhagavatam is no better than a Yavan, and Lord Yamaraj punishes him birth after birth. Is that from Chaitanya Bhagavat? Sounds like a Chaitanya Bhagavat verse. Thanks for sharing that, Kishore. So, now, oh yeah, today is Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇ's disappearance day. I don't know, here in Navadvip, I'm not sure what it is in your local calendars. Actually, I'm just curious, is it in Vrindavan 2023 calendar? Just want to see in Vrindavan. What's today? Today is July, August. Okay, today's the 29th May. Yeah, in Vrindavan it is also today, 29 May, disappearance day of Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. All right. So I would like to read something about Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. This is a very short chapter. Not a short chapter. We're at the end of it. And something I did yesterday, I checked out how many more days of reading we have. So I was going to do it in 2 days, like just finish off today and start reading the next chapter and then finish the last chapter of Uddhava-gīta tomorrow. But then just before I started, I changed my mind and I decided to read about Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. So it'll take us 3 days to finish. But then I checked the 12th canto, how many days worth of reading it is. And it is only two. There are only 2 more chapters after Uddhava-gīta in the 11th canto. And these chapters are all pretty short in the 12th canto. So I think we'll have about 16, I think we'll finish everything in about 2 weeks, or maybe 15 or 16 days. And then we'll have completed the entire Srimad Bhagavatam with Śrīla Prabhupāda's commentary, and then afterwards Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura's commentary. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting, huh? And then, Guru Purnima is in 1 month, 4 days from now. So that's when we'll start the daily Chaitanya Bhagavat reading. So there are going to be 2 weeks in between when we finish Srimad Bhagavatam and when we start Chaitanya Bhagavat. So I wonder what we should do in those 2 weeks. Maybe one book we could read is Golden Volcano of Divine Love. That's a beautiful book, and it's short. Anyways, we can figure it out. Haribo, Sudevi Didi. Okay, so let's see if I didn't, because I just decided right before we started that we'll do Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa right here. All right, so we'll read from Śrīla Bhakti-vigyāna Bharati Gosvāmī Maharaj on Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Maybe let's first do Srimad Bhagavatam and then we'll end with that, with Śrīla Bharati Maharaj's glorification of Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. So where am I looking? Okay. Let's get a recap. Okay, so I'm going to read this recap from this book, Bhagavat Pravaha. Okay, in the previous chapter, we read about deity worship. At the request of Uddhava, Krishna then explains the significance of worshipping the deity form of the Lord. Krishna, while describing all the rules, regulations, recommendations, and practices of deity worship, he explains how such deity worship could automatically bring purity and satisfaction to the mind and detach one from sense gratification. Uddhava then asked Krishna, "The soul is spiritual and transcendental to material coverings, and the body is dull, unconscious matter. Thus, to whom does this experience of material existence actually pertain? Does this experience pertain to the soul, who is transcendental to material coverings, or the body, which is just dull, unconscious matter?" So Krishna replied, "Although the objects in a dream are unreal, the person who is dreaming experiences fear, excitement, etc. Similarly, the experiences of matter are substantiated only because the spirit soul identifies with the body and senses by means of the false ego. Thus, one's material existence continues so long the conditioned soul maintains the mentality of lording it over material nature. Understanding the all-pervasiveness of the one and only absolute truth, one should refute one's misidentification with matter and cut this false ego with the sword of knowledge, sharpened by bhakti. One must live in this world free from all attachment until all contamination of the mind is eliminated. Once such a platform is achieved, the yogi is never defeated by any obstacles." Okay, so we're going to finish up this chapter now. I think we read up to verse 33. Yeah. Or maybe verse 2. No, I think we finished this one. Let's just go back a few verses just to get the flow. Okay. "For one who has properly realized my personal identity as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, what credit is there if his senses, which are products of the modes of material nature, are perfectly concentrated? What credit is there if his senses, which are products of the modes of nature, are perfectly concentrated in meditation? And what blame is incurred if his senses happen to become agitated? What does it mean to the sun when the clouds come and go in the sky? When the clouds come and go in the sky." Sorry guys, I'm having a hard time reading today. "The sky is never affected by the various qualities of the air, fire, water, and earth that pass through it, as well as such qualities as heat and cold, which continually come and go with the seasons. Similarly, the Supreme Absolute Truth is never tinged by the contaminations of the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, which cause the transformations of false ego. Still, until one has completely eliminated from his mind all material contamination by undivided engagement in my devotional service, one must very carefully avoid associating with the modes of material nature, which are products of my illusory energy." Just as a disease that is not treated repeatedly recurs, causing one great distress, if the mind is not purified of all material contamination, then it will remain attached to material things and repeatedly torments the imperfect yogi. Sometimes the progress of a neophyte's transcendentalist is impeded due to excessive attachments to family members or others who are sent by envious demigods. However, on the strength of their spiritual advancement, such imperfection by the strength of their spiritual advancement, such imperfect transcendentalists will resume their practice of yoga in the next life. They will never again be bound like ordinary materialists in the network of karma. The conditioned living entity performs fruitive work and suffers and enjoys the reactions to his karma. Thus, he continues to work fruitively right up to the very moment of his death. One who is wise, however, after experiencing transcendental ecstasy, gives up all material desires, and refrains from engaging in fruitive work. One whose consciousness is absorbed in thought of the Lord does not even understand how his body is acting. While walking, sitting, standing, lying down, passing urine, eating, or doing anything else, he simply thinks that the body is acting according to its acquired nature. Although a self-realized soul encounters material objects and activities, which are temporary, he does not accept them as reality, just as a man awakening from sleep views his fading dream as an illusory manifestation of the mind. So now we come to verse 33. Purvam grihitam gunakarma chitram ajnanamatmanyaviviktamanga nivartate tat punarikshayaiva punarikshayaiva na grihyate napi visriya atma. My dear Uddhav, material nescience, which expands into many varieties by the activities, is wrongly accepted by the conditioned soul to be the actual condition of the self. But through the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, this nescience fades away as one proceeds towards liberation. The eternal self is never wrongly accepted nor rejected at any stage, however. Sārārtha-darśinī. Knowledge is the destroyer of ignorance. All activities performed under the influence of the three modes of material nature during the conditioned state of existence are born of ignorance. Although illusory, such activities appear to be real to the conditioned soul. One should try to vanquish his ignorance by the cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Ignorance is only accepted due to lack of proper understanding, and so it is rejected when one becomes enlightened with knowledge of the self, which is changeless and eternal. This is the Sārārtha-darśinī of Śrīla Viśvanātha Ṭhākura, and now the Gauḍīya Bhāṣya of Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. The visible objects of this world are always subject to transformation. The knowledge that is cultivated by a seer whose senses are imperfect is another side of ignorance. The pure spirit soul, on the other hand, is unchanging and without the four defects that are characteristic of conditional life. Whatever activities the conditioned soul performs under the direction of false ego, which is the creation of the modes of nature, have a foundation of ignorance. When spiritual knowledge is awakened, one regards his previous experiences as inconsequential. This is a symptom of self-realization. One should never mistakenly equate temporary material existence with liberated existence in the spiritual realm. One should never mistakenly equate temporary material existence with liberated existence in the spiritual realm. It is only by identification with the temporary material body and subtle mind that one engages in the meaningless activities of sense gratification or artificial renunciation. Yata hi bhanor udayo nrichakshusham tamo nihanyan natu sarvidatte evam samiksha nipuna sati me hanyat tamisram purushasya buddhe. Just as when the sun rises, it destroys the darkness covering men's eyes, but it does not create the objects they perceive, so factual realization of me destroys the ignorance covering one's pure consciousness. I don't fully understand that. When the sun rises, it destroys the darkness covering men's eyes, but it does not create the objects they perceive. So, factual realization of me destroys the ignorance covering one's pure consciousness. I don't get why it says, but what it has to do with, it does not create the objects they perceive. When the sun rises, what's that have to do with? Anyways, maybe we'll find out in the commentary. Sārārtha-darśinī. One who is self-realized understands that the soul is not subject to material transformation. It is changeless and eternal. Attributing material designations to the spirit soul is simply a result of ignorance. That's what the Sahajas do. When the sun rises, the darkness covering one's eyes is removed so that one can see things as they are. Similarly, realization of the self dispels the darkness of ignorance, which covers his real knowledge. Okay, that didn't mention anything about it not creating objects they perceive. Let's see if it's in the Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The contamination of an object is a temporary imposition. When the contamination is removed, the object displays its original purity. When one's intelligence is fully engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, the propensities for material enjoyment and artificial renunciation leave his association. When one's contaminated material concept of life is vanquished, he regains his natural and healthy state of serving the Supreme Lord. Just as when the sun rises, one can see things as they are, similarly, when the darkness of ignorance is dispelled by realization of the self, one can engage in his natural condition as the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Anyhow. Esha swayam jyotir ajo prameyo mahanubhuti. No, sorry, I did the wrong meter. Esha swayam jyotir ajo prameyo mahanubhuti sakalanubhuti eko dvitiyo vachasam virame ene shitava gasavascharanti. Haribol Prajumna Prabhu and Mantaramurti Mataji. The Supreme Lord is self-luminous, unborn, and immeasurable. He is pure, transcendental consciousness, all-pervading knowledge, and one without a second. He is realized only after ordinary words cease. Wow, I like that. He is realized only after ordinary words cease. By him, the power of speech and the life airs are set into motion. Sārārtha-darśinī. The supersoul is compared to the sun, whereas the individual souls are compared to the rays of the sun. The distinction between the supersoul and the innumerable spirit souls is being described in this verse. The supersoul is self-manifest and self-effulgent, but the living entities are manifested by him. The Lord is unborn, but the living entities become subject to material designations. The Lord is immeasurable or all-pervading, whereas the living entities are localized. The supersoul is the supreme spirit whole, and the living entities are his minute parts and parcels. He is omniscient, whereas the living entity is only aware of his limited experience. The Supreme Lord is one, whereas the living entities are many. Any description of the Supreme Lord is beyond the power of the words of the conditioned souls. It is said in the Vedas, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. The descriptive power of speech fails in the realm of the Supreme Truth, and the speculative power of the mind cannot achieve him. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Supreme Lord is unborn, beyond the range of the material senses, fully spiritual, not bound by time, space, or circumstances, omniscient, and one without a second. When the limit of one's speech is attained within this world, the Supreme Lord remains far beyond reach. Rather, by the influence of the Supreme Lord, the power of speech comes to life. It is the Lord who awards the power. I'm just remembering when the Lord touched the conch shell to Dhruva Maharaj, and as soon as he did that, then Dhruva Maharaj was able to glorify him with the best verses, but it was because the Lord touched his conch shell to his head. It is the Lord who awards the power of the senses to the conditioned souls, and when he desires, that power is withdrawn. The relationship of the independent Lord with the minute living entities is technically called Svajatiya Bhed. The living entity's relationship with the material nature is technically called Vijatiya Bhed. The Lord's relationship with the spiritual nature is termed Swagata Bhed. Being influenced by the external energy of the Lord, there is confusion in the minds of the Mayavadis regarding Swagata Bhed, Swajatiya Bhed, and Vijatiya Bhed. The enlightened view of these words is that they establish the supremacy of the Lord, whereas the unenlightened view misconstrues the meaning that there is, the unenlightened view misconstrues a meaning that there is an existence separate from the Supreme Lord. I want to look into this more because, anyways, I'll just continue. Etavan atmasammoho yadvikalpastu kevale atman rite samatmanam avalambo nayasyahi. Whatever duality appears to be applicable to the self is simply a manifestation of the mind's bewilderment. There is no factual basis of such duality except the fact that it is imagined by the conditioned soul. Sārārtha-darśinī. One may question, how can the Supersoul be one without a second when we can directly see that this visible world is separate from him? The answer is, there is no duality present in the soul, and so what to speak of the Supreme Soul? Whatever is perceived as being separate from the Lord is not because everything in existence is the Lord and his energies. The perception of duality is simply due to a state of delusion within the mind. That the Supersoul is one without a second is stated in the Vedas, Neha nanastiti kinchana. Besides this, nothing exists. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The soul is pure spiritual existence, without any tinge of matter. After comprehending the illusory nature of material variegatedness, one should not foolishly conclude that there is no difference between the minute souls and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is always in a superior position, and the living entities are eternally subordinate. The soul is naturally free from material association, but by misuse of his minute independence, he becomes conditioned by Maya. Transcendental reality has nothing to do with material variegatedness. It is most unreasonable to try to attribute the characteristics of this material world to the Lord's eternal characteristics and pastimes. The conception of duality that is born from the deluded mind of the conditioned soul can never cover the effulgent glory of spiritual variegatedness. Yannama kritibhir grahyan panchavarnam abadhitam vyartena pyartavadoyang dvayang panditamaninam. The duality that is applied to the 5 gross material elements is understood by their names and forms. Those who claim that such a dualistic conception is reality are mundane scholars who proudly put forward their theories without actual realization of the truth. Sārārtha-darśinī. Cotton is the cause of cloth, and cloth is the effect of cotton. Cloth could not exist without the existence of cotton. No genuinely learned man could fail to understand this. This visible world of names and forms, composed of the 5 gross elements, is perceivable by the material senses. All such manifestations have a beginning and an end, and so are not ultimate reality. The Supreme Personality of Godhead had previously stated in this chapter, Pratyakshena numanena nigamenatma samvida Adyantavad asaj gyatva nisango vichared iha. By direct perception, logical deduction, scriptural authority, and personal realization, one should know that this world has a beginning and an end, and so is not the ultimate reality. Thus, one should live in this world without attachment. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Material names and forms having a beginning and an end have no permanent existence, and so do not constitute essential reality. This cosmic manifestation is a transformation of one of the energies of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is the absolute truth, and his potencies are also truth. But the names and forms that are temporarily manifested in this material world have no eternal existence. There are two kinds of pseudo-scholars: those who accept matter as ultimate reality, and those who imagine spirit to be devoid of variegatedness. Neither group accepts the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and so they are not fit to be addressed as actually learned. The cultivation of knowledge devoid of the service of the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the reach of mundane sense perception, is the only asset of such pseudo-scholars. Yogino pakva yogasya yunjata kaya uthitai upasargar vihanyeta tatrayang vihito vidhi. The physical body of a neophyte yogi who has not yet achieved maturity in his practice may sometimes be afflicted by various disturbances such as disease. For them, the following process is recommended. Sārārtha-darśinī. After outlining the process of Jñāna-yoga, the Lord herein gives instructions to those who are disturbed by a disease or other impediments. Yogis who are still on the material platform due to incomplete realization are given some suggestions by the Lord in this regard. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Often, Hatha yogis and Raja yogis who disregard devotional service to the Lord cannot complete their yoga practice due to remaining in the bodily conception of life. The process of devotional service to the Lord, which is the constitutional duty of the soul, has been prescribed to elevate such imperfect yogis to the transcendental platform. Yoga dharanaya kaṅśchid asanar dharanan vitai tapo mantra shraddhai kaṅśchid upasargan vinirdahet. Some disturbances, such as heat and cold, can be counteracted by meditating on the sun and moon. Illnesses, such as gastric disorders, can be restrained by practicing sitting postures and breath control. Performance of penance, chanting of mantras, and the application of medicinal herbs can counteract inauspicious planetary positions, fear of snakebite, and so on. Sārārtha-darśinī. By practicing yoga and meditating on the sun and the moon, one can get relief from the miseries caused by excessive heat and cold. By practicing asanas and pranayam, one can cure gastric ailments. By the performance of penance, the chanting of mantras, and ingestion of medicinal herbs, one can neutralize inauspiciousness caused by planetary positions and the threat of snake bites. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. For the removal of obstacles on the path of karma yoga and hatha yoga, various practices have been advised. Such remedial measures are only for those who are not surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kaṅścin mamanudhyanena nama sankirtanadhibi Yogeshvarānuvrittya va hanyad ashubhadan shanai. One can destroy disturbances such as lust by always thinking of me and by congregational chanting my holy names. One can destroy the obstacles of pride and false ego by following in the footsteps of the masters of mystic yoga. Sārārtha-darśinī. One should overcome lust by meditating on the Supreme Lord. One should subdue his pride by following in the footsteps of great souls. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. By engaging in the practice of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, beginning with hearing and chanting the Lord's holy names, and meditating upon his transcendental pastimes, all inauspiciousness within the heart, which are impediments to one's advancement, will gradually diminish. Kechir deham imam dhira sukalpam vayasi stiram vidhaya vividhopayar attayunjanti siddhaye. There are methods by which yogis can remain free from disease and keep themselves in a youthful condition of life without experiencing the distresses of old age. Thus they practice yoga for the purpose of achieving mystic perfections. Sārārtha-darśinī. Some yogis employ various methods to keep their body fit and youthful, desiring to attain mystic perfections. They try to master the mystic perfection of entering another's body so that they can utilize it for sense enjoyment. Such practices are not to be accepted as devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The practice of Hatha Yoga is generally accepted with a desire to attain the 18 kinds of mystic perfection. Such practices cannot be counted as limbs of devotional service. Nahi tat kushala dhrityam tarayaso hyapartaka antavatvach charirasya Falasyeva vanaspate. Learned persons who are experts in transcendental knowledge do not very highly value these mystic perfections because the soul, like a tree, is permanent, and the body, like the tree's fruit, is perishable. Sārārtha-darśinī. Those who have actually realized the eternal nature of the self are not tempted by the allurements that mystic powers offer. The spirit soul is permanent, like a tree that may live for a very long time, but the material body is soon to perish, like the fruit of the tree that quickly spoils. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. A tree produces seasonal fruits, but even after the fruit is gone, the tree remains for a very long time. Self-realized souls, knowing perfectly well that the gross and subtle bodies, which are temporary manifestations of material nature, are perishable, do not undergo the severe penance required to obtain mystic powers. Yogam nishevato nityang kayaschet kalpatam iyat tachradadhyan namartiman yogam utsrijamat para. Although the physical body may be improved by the practice of yoga, an intelligent person who has dedicated his life to me does not place his faith in such a prospect, and in fact shuns such practices. Comment Sārārtha-darśinī. Even if there is the prospect of achieving a duration of life of 1 kalpa by the practice of mystic yoga, an intelligent person will not place his faith in such a thing, but rather dedicate himself to Lord Krishna's devotional service. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Although in the scriptures there are recommendations for the performance of Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Pranayam, ultimately it is advised that one become freed from all types of material bondage by faithfully worshipping the Supreme Lord in the association of devotees. The devotees of the Supreme Lord cannot place their faith in any process for overcoming lust, anger, and so on, other than devotional service to Lord Mukunda. In this connection, one should consider this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.6.36. Sarvam tad idamakyatam yat prishto ham tvaya naga janma karma rahasyang me bhavatash chatma toshanam. O Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization as you asked. All this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. Yogacharyam imam yogi vicharan mad apashraya nantarayar vihanyeta nispriha svasukhanubhu. My unalloyed devotee is without material hankering because he is satisfied within the self, and thus he experiences unlimited happiness. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never deterred by impediments. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Although the followers of Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga make some progress in their respective practices, they generally fail to gain success because they are confronted by numerous obstacles. However, one who surrenders to the Supreme Lord, who is the transcendental Cupid, will certainly come out victorious on his path back home, back to Godhead. Thus ends the translation of the 22nd chapter of the Uddhava-gīta entitled Jñāna-yoga, with the commentaries of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura and chapter summary and purports by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura. All right, so tomorrow we will come to the very last chapter of Uddhava-gīta, Bhakti Yoga. And we'll take 2 days to get through this. And now, we'll read about Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Oh, Haribol, Sudevi Didi. And Raseshwari Mataji, Haribol. Okay, since there's such short time left, I'm going to just jump over to Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa now. So that, and I'll look at your question later on for Juna Prabhu. Let's see. Oh, I want to open this up in Reader. Let's try this. Then you can see it better. Save page to Reader. Okay, let's go to Reader now. I just got this service. Here. Did it come here? No, it didn't. Okay. So let's... There. Let's make the text size really big. And the line length big. The line spacing big. There, this will make it big. There. Okay. May 30th is the disappearance day of Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa in Vrindavan, India. Hey, that's not the same as the calendar I just looked at. Anyways, whatever. Okay. The following is an excerpt from a Bhava Anuvad of the Katha given by Śrīla Bhakti-Vigyan Bharati Goswāmī Maharaj on June 8, 2014. Today is a very special day. It is the appearance day of Ganga Mata Goswamini and the disappearance day of Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. It is essential to remember Vaishnavas on their appearance and disappearance days. This act of remembrance is a limb of bhakti, and failing to remember them on their titis is considered an offense. Here's a picture of Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa appeared in Odisha in the Kandayat Kul, the Kandayat caste. After completing his initial education there, he proceeded to Karnataka, Mysore, where he studied the Vedanta and other scriptures, and then went on to other various places across India, continuing his study of scriptures. Eventually, he reached Vrindavan, where he studied Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-gīta under the tutelage of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura, whom he accepted as his Shiksha Guru, establishing the legitimacy of Gauḍīya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Once the king of Jaipur, who had accepted Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura as his spiritual master, and hence belongs to the Gauḍīya Vaishnava Sampradaya, was faced with a challenge from the scholars from other sampradayas like the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Nimbarka Sampradaya, and the Vishnusami Sampradaya. They were challenging him to prove the legitimacy of the Gauḍīya Vaishnava Sampradaya. They did not consider the Gauḍīya Vaishnava Sampradaya as a sattvat, as bona fide, as it did not have any commentary on the Vedanta, although it does have commentaries on Bhagavad-gīta, the Upanishads, and Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's a note from the editors here. It says, in traditional Vedantic circles, it is an accepted custom that for any sampradaya to be considered authentic, it should have its own commentary on the Prasthana-traya. The Prasthana-traya refers to the three, how do you say that word? Canonical texts. So the three canonical texts of the Vedic philosophy, comprising Bhagavad-gīta, the 10 principal Upanishads, and the Vedanta Sutras. Thus, the Ramanandis were contesting that the Gauḍīya Vaishnavas should give up the service of the deities of Govinda and Gopinath, entrusting it to members of a bona fide sampradaya. The king of Jaipur was now faced with a predicament. He sent word to his Guru Padma, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura, asking for his intervention. Playing the part of being incapacitated due to his advanced age, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura could not travel to Jaipur in person, and hence he sent his scholarly disciple Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa in his stead. It was the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Dev that there is no need to write any commentary on the Vedanta Sutra as Vedavyas, the Adi Guru, has written in the Garuda Puran. Where's the verse? Anyways, the verse is Arthayam Brahmasutranam, right? That's the one from Garuda Puran. How does it go? Arthayam Brahmasutranam. How did I forget it? It's such a common verse. Arthayam Brahmasutranam. Gayatri. Let's just find it. Artho Yam Brahmasutranam. God, I know this verse very well. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Bharata Artha Vinirnaya, that's what it is. Anyways, let's just see it here. Oh God, I have my blocker on. Anyways, it's Artha Yam Brahmasutranam Bharata Artha Vinirnaya Gayatri Bhāṣya Rupavso Vedanta Paribhrimita. There it is. Vedanta Paribhrimita. Sorry, I can't. I have my blocker on, so I can't. So the translation is, Srimad Bhagavatam is the authorized explanation of the Brahma Sutra, or Vedanta Sutra. And it is a further explanation of the Mahabharata. It is the explanation of the Gayatri Mantra, and the essence of all Vedic knowledge. This Srimad Bhagavatam, containing 18,000 verses, is known as the explanation of all Vedic literature. So it is clearly stated herein, Vedartha Paribhrimita, that is, the meaning of the Vedas have been explained elaborately in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had asserted that the Srimad Bhagavatam itself is the natural commentary on the Vedanta, on the Vedas, and so there is no need to write anything new. But now, in Jaipur, upon the insistence of the other sampradayas, Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa contemplated, if I were to write a commentary, will I be going against the instructions of Mahaprabhu and become an offender at his lotus feet? What shall I do in such a situation? Then he remembered Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who had been requested by Sri Haridas Goswami to compose the additional pastimes of Mahaprabhu, such as the sannyas pastimes, etc., which were left undescribed by Srila Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura in his book Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was in a dilemma. He considered, "In this advanced age, my eyes cannot see properly, my hands shake, and my ears are barely functional. In this situation, what shall I do? A Vaishnav is Guru, and Agya Gurunam Avicharaniya. Guru's instructions must be followed without any deliberation." Then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami went to the temple of Sri Madan Mohan, who is the Sambandha Adidev, the bestower of knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. And so he fell at his lotus feet, praying for guidance, and remained there waiting for his instructions. Then the garland of Sri Madan Mohan loosened and dropped, and the pujari, whose name is Gosai Das, gave that prasadi garlands to Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Accepting this as Madan Mohan's sanction, he later wrote, "E granta lekhai more nanda Madana Mohan." Actually, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is not my writing, but the dictation of Sri Madan Mohan. My writing is like the repetition of a parrot. My writing is like Shukera Patan, the repetition of a parrot. Shuka is a bird which repeats what it hears, so I write what Sri Madan Mohan speaks to me. Srila Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa went to the temple of Govindadev, who is the Abhideya Devata, and fell at his feet in prayer. In sanction, Govindadev's garlands fell. Thus he named his commentary on Vedanta Sutra Govinda Bhāṣya, indicating, "These are not my words. I've written whatever Govindadev made me write." He was given a month's time to compose the commentary, but he completed it much sooner, and it eventually became the topmost commentary. Srila Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa wrote that the same Lord Sri Chaitanya Dev, who disapproved of writing any commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, has now, as Govindadev, ordered me to write the commentary Govinda Bhāṣya. And here's an original manuscript of the Govinda Bhāṣya. So glorious. Let me just see the comments really quick. Oh, interesting. Kishore said that Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa's Gurudev was Radha Damodar Goswami from the Shamananda Parivar. This was discovered by Param Gurudev. Cool. Oh yeah, this has been where you've been studying this, haven't you, Pradyumna Prabhu? About the line of Madhva. About the Gauḍīya Vaishnavas, about us being in the line of Madhva. So glorious is his writing that it was even accepted by the Oxford University. A professor from Shantiniketan, who had been to Oxford, mentions that he found an English translation of the Govinda Bhāṣya there, although it was not available in India. Some verses from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita were also mentioned in it, so he got inspired to read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Later, when he acquired a copy and read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he became a Vaishnav. He personally related this incident to us in an assembly which was convened on the occasion of the inauguration of Mahaprabhu's temple. Here's the Shyamasundar deity installed by Sri Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Radha Shyamasundar. Sri Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa has also written the Gita Bhāṣya, a commentary on Śrīmad Bhagavad-gīta, among numerous other scriptures. Thus, these stalwart Vaishnavas contributed greatly to firmly establish the Gauḍīya conceptions and teachings, like Srila Jiva Goswami did through the Shat Sandarbhas. There is one deity, the Vijay Gopal, at Galta, whose worship was established by Srila Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa installed the large deity of Śyamasundar in the Śyamasundar temple of Vrindavan. The smaller deity of Śyamasundar on the altar, the smaller deity of Śyamasundar on the altar there was manifested by Shyamananda Prabhu. The stupendous power of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. On today's Tithi, Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa disappeared from this material realm, so we will remember him and pray for his mercy, because without the mercy of Vaishnavas, we can never attain Hari Bhakti, and we can never be liberated from Maya's grip. Śrīla Raghunath Das Goswāmī wrote in Śrī Manashiksha, Pratishtashā dhrishta swapacharamani me hridinatet, katham sadhu prema sprishati suchiretan nanumana, yata tam nishkasya toritam yahatang veshayatisa. It's missing a line. Anyways, O minds, how can pure divine love appear in my heart as long as the shameless dog-eating outcast woman of the desire for prestige is audaciously dancing there? Therefore, always remember and serve the immeasurably powerful commanders of the army of Sri Krishna, the beloved devotees of the Lord. It's missing that line here. It says, Sadatang sevasya. What is it? Sadatang sevasya prabhudaitam samantam atulam. It's the third line. Anyways. And that means, what does it mean? It means one should always remember and serve the immeasurably powerful commanders of the army of Sri Krishna, the beloved devotees of the Lord. They will at once banish this outcast woman and initiate the flow of immaculate Vraja-prema in your heart. As long as the untouchable woman in the form of Pratishdasha, the desire for name and fame, is dancing in my heart, how will the touch of the pure love of sadhus touch me? So is there no solution? Yes, there is. Sadatang sevasya prabhudaita samantam atulam. Always serve prabhudaita samantam. Samantam means the Senapati, or the commanders-in-chief of the army. Their work is to fight and drive out the enemies and make the country free from danger. So they will fight and drive out the enemies like this unchaste woman sitting in our heart, and make the heart a place where prem, love for God, can dwell. Who are these commanders-in-chief? Rupa Sanatan. They are the Senapatis of the Vaishnavas. When one is in the shelter of the Vaishnavas, when one is surrendered to the Vaishnavas, there can be no fear or danger. The three great impediments in Hari Bhakti are Kanaka, Kamini, and Pratishta. One may give up the Kanaka and Kamini, but victory over Pratishta is very difficult. But wherever the mercy of the Vaishnavas prevails, there is no fear or danger. Therefore, it is very essential to surrender to the Vaishnavas. Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Śrīla Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa Prabhu ki Jai. Śrīla Bhakti-Vigyāna Bharati Goswāmī Maharaj ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Śrīla Gurudev ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Shishmar Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Shishmar Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Śrīla Prabhupāda ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Shishmar Śrīla Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishtam Vishnupada Shratarashata Shishmad Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gorkishwaras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Śrīla Gorkishwaras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Nugogoriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanantari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Ṭhākura ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय. सर्व अभिष्ट विदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्रील बलदेव-vidyābhūṣaṇa प्रभु की जय. तदीय शुभ थिरुभाव तिथि की जय. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. Hari Bo Prajumna Prabhu. All glories to Srila Gurudev who gave us such literature, both nectarian and logical, and in accordance with Shastra Quran. Hari Bol, everybody. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hari Bol. See you all tomorrow. Oh yeah, and Satya Mataji said that the smaller deity at Shri Radha Shyamasundar was given to Shyamananda Prabhu from Srimati Radharani from her heart. And then the bigger Thakurji is established by Baladeva-vidyābhūṣaṇa. Yes. Yes, those small Radha Shyamasundar are very special. All right, Hari Bol, everybody. See you tomorrow. Oh yeah, and that quote from Kishore was from 5 Essential Essays. Cool. All right, Hari Bol, everybody. Jai Shri Radha.